Hello everybody, it's Sylvie. Welcome or welcome back to Tarot Magpie. I hope you're doing all kinds of good today. This video is going to be a good old-fashioned tarot tag. It's a collection of decks. You know I love to curate and collect and craft an aesthetic and bring things together in categories. This is the Tarot in Twilight tag created by Tarot Geek here on YouTube. I will of course link her video below. I believe she kind of came up with this tag as she was just bringing together her decks for the new year, and I really enjoyed her video and her selection, and I thought, you know what, it's been a minute since I did a tag like this where you just pick decks on a theme. So that's what we're doing today. This is 13 prompts and 13 decks, mostly with a kind of wintry new year adjacent vibe. So let us jump in. First prompt is Frost Kissed Reflections, which is a winter chill kind of deck, and I simply had to. This is the winter Waite Redux with the starry lamination. This is a tarot collectibles deck. I've brought this out recently a handful of times, I believe, on the channel. It was in my December deck stack. It causes absolute havoc with the camera, but in life it's not so obviously glary and reflecty. It's just really pretty. And specifically Frost Kissed Reflections. So I didn't even mean to do the like reflection thing with the glare and the reflection, but it's just so sparkly. And you know when it's frosty, and is it hoarfrost? Is that what it is? Where everything looks kind of dusted in glittery silvery frost. That is what this deck feels like to me. So obviously it's wintry because it's got all these like snowy and like Christmassy icy themes, but also just the pastels, icy sparkly color palette feels very wintry to me. Prompt number 2 is Wild and Whimsical, a deck with playful art. And for this, I grabbed the Tarot of a Moon Garden, which I'm certain I have described as being whimsical before. It just does have a very magical, very whimsical kind of energy to it. It feels like the kind of magical that you see in like children's stories. It's that flavor of magical. It's not like fantasy books, it's magic books. Does that make sense? I also just think the color palette in this is also absolutely divine. All of the purples. I love the art style with all the butterflies, the unicorns, the flowers, the moons. Also because it's a nighttime deck, it's Tarot of a Moon Garden, and so that also feels quite appropriate for winter because it's dark in the winter. Like that feels obvious. It's like this Eight of Swords with the clouds in the background. This feels very wintry, and this is also just a deck I've been loving. I think this made it into either my favorites or my runners up of 2024. So it does feel like it fits with the new year to be like kicking off the new year with one of my favorites from last year. So that is the Tarot of a Moon Garden, which is my Wild and Whimsical deck. Let's have a little commotion for the edges. Prompt number 3 is Rooted in Tradition, which is a dependable deck. And for this prompt, I have grabbed the Fyodor Pavlov Tarot. All right, so I've zoomed us in a little bit. And the reason I grabbed this deck for this prompt is because it is just such a, first of all, it's a really dependable deck, but that I think is because it's such a good Rider-Waite-Smith based deck. It is rooted in that Rider-Waite-Smith system, and it does its own thing with some of the artwork. It's a little bit of a twist on some of the meanings. It's a little bit updated in terms of the gender roles that are in the deck, but it's very firmly Rider-Waite-Smith. Then I also think this is a really dependable deck just because it's so easy to read. I think if you're familiar with the Rider-Waite-Smith system, this is a breeze to read, and I also just love it. I do also just think it's beautiful. I think the art style is gorgeous. It's just a really solid deck. It's one that never jumps out at me when I'm going through my decks. It's not the most like unique or exciting deck, but it is one that I can always read with. It's one that it's easy for me to grab when I just want to do a reading. if that makes sense. I don't have to struggle with it. I don't have to be in the right headspace for this deck. I just can grab it, pull some cards, and know what it's saying. So that is the Fyodor Pavlov, my dependable deck. In contrast to the Fyodor Pavlov that I was just saying doesn't scream for my attention, the next prompt number 4, is Bold and Beautiful, a deck that is shouting for attention. For this one, I grabbed the Klimt Tarot, which is new to me. I bought this, I think, 2 weeks ago, so that is partly why this is shouting for my attention, just because it's new. It kind of jumped out at me in the shop. I kind of just wanted to buy a tarot deck. This is one I've had a look at in person before and decided that I wanted, but mainly I'm like, it's because it's gold, it's shiny, it is kind of loud, it is attention grabbing, it is really beautiful. Obviously this is new, so I haven't worked with it a whole ton. I did buy this when I was out with some friends, and then we went to a pub and I pulled some cards and did some readings, and I'm like, it's an art collection deck from Klimt's existing artwork. This was not created as a tarot deck. I think this is beautiful. Fairly consistent with the Rider-Waite-Smith, some cards more than others, some I would not necessarily agree with. I'm not very familiar with Klimt's body of work. I don't know how well the sort of subjects and themes of the actual paintings line up with the cards they've been put in. I am blissfully ignorant of that. Like, look at this bold old stripe of gold down the side. It's just gorgeous. So as I was saying, I'm not sure how well this makes sense from sort of an art history perspective, but I don't have that perspective, so I can just say, yeah, this is a pretty solid Rider-Waite-Smith based deck. It's absolutely stunning, and because it's new and literally shiny, I just want to reach for it. I am of course torn whether I want to do the edges black or gold, because black would be really easy because the front and the back both have black borders, but gold, or even just like a yellow, like I could use a gold Sharpie and try and make it metallic, but I think even a like this kind of warm golden yellow might look really nice. Next prompt number 5 is Shadows and Secrets, a mysterious deck, and I grabbed the Tarot of the Dream Enchantress. This is another Lo Scarabeo offering. I did these kind of tealy edges to match with the backs, and like the clue is in the name, Tarot of the Dream Enchantress. I immediately thought of this for like shadows, secrets, mysterious decks. It is this kind of dreamy, otherworldly, fae kind of a deck. I really love this 6 of Swords. I feel like I'm in another world. I feel like I'm in a fantasy book. This kind of sky ship thing is just very cool to me. I think I spoke about this deck in my decks for air signs video, because especially because of the watercolor backgrounds and the way the colors are laid down, it feels very airy. I don't think I thought this was a water deck. I think it feels more airy because of the sort of magical fae kind of setting. The fantasy kind of setting feels more airy to me. I suppose this is a less shadowy deck, like just based on shadows and secrets I wouldn't necessarily go for this. I would go for something that maybe was a little bit more gloomy or a little bit more macabre. I say as I come across this quite intense tower. There are certainly some cards that are a bit more sort of dark and shadowy, but for the most part it doesn't feel shadowy, but it does feel like a sort of hidden or secret world, which I think fits. And there's a lot of the, you know, these fae or elves or whatever, there's a lot of observing humans and kind of staying a bit hidden. This is kind of an unseen hidden world or a kind of secret world. So that is the Tarot of the Dream Enchantress. I do not pull this one out as much as I wish I did. I really enjoy it. I think it's a bit of a hidden gem of a deck. Prompt number 6 is Gentle Guidance, a nurturing deck, and I had to grab the Spirit Animal Tarot, which I've got to do something about this box. It needs a bag because this is a nightmare. This is a nurturing, gentle deck. I love this. I have absolutely fallen in love with this. It is definitely more on the positive side of tarot. Like, I wouldn't say it's light washing. I wouldn't say it's toxic positivity. I don't think it's anything like that. It's just that in the guidebook, every card, even the more traditionally negative cards, like say the Vulture, the Ten of Feathers, which is Swords, or the Rabbit, which is the Moon card, or something like the Tower or the Devil, they put a positive spin on it in the guidebook, which I don't think is a bad thing. It's just not what I usually go for, and in fact I tend to avoid that sort of take. Like here, this is 15, which would be the devil, but here it is the shadow god of liberation, which is definitely a more positive spin on the card meanings. This is something I tend to avoid, but I bought this in a moment where I like wanted a deck to be nice to me. It was kind of an impulse, well, it was completely an impulse buy. I saw this in TK Maxx for a discounted price and I was like, this looks really pretty. I saw this 3 of shells with the otters and I was like, yes, okay, we're buying that. I'll take it home. And I absolutely fell in love with it. It's just so, it is gentle, it is nurturing. I still get some really deep and meaningful readings, but kind of with a hug, you know? So that is what this deck is for me. Immediately, I knew this was the deck I was going to grab for this prompt. And this is definitely something that is needed in the winter, although we need that all year round, but like the world is tough right now. The news is terrifying and the world is scary. And here we go with a magpie. Yeah, it's hard to exist in the world right now. It's a hard world to exist in. This kind of gentle, nurturing tarot deck is very necessary. Prompt number 7, Nature's Whispers, a deck that is that kind of earth connection. And I've grabbed Midnight Magic, which is a mushroom deck. It's another nighttime deck. So sort of similar to what I was saying about the Tower of a Moon Garden, which is a nighttime deck. That feels very appropriate for winter, for this dark season. This is the same. I have previously said, and I still agree with myself, that this feels more like late summer. It's that kind of cozy dark. But it's definitely a very earthy deck. It's literally mushrooms and fungi and things that grow in the soil and from like dark places. It's not the first deck I thought of when I saw the prompt Nature's Whispers. The things that sort of jump to mind for that is maybe the Naturescapes Tarot, maybe the Sustain Yourself Oracle. I love this Queen of Wands. And maybe even like the Herbcrafters Tarot, but this one just felt the most correct for that like specifically earth connection. It's a very earthy deck, although the artwork feels more cozy late summer nights to me. It's appropriate all year round. I've not actually reached for this in a while, deck collector problems, but yeah, that is the Midnight Magic Tarot. Prompt number 8, Cultural Mosaic, a deck with a specific culture or mythology. Okay, hear me out. I don't think I have any specific culture or, oh wow, the tower on top, that's fun. I really don't think I have any decks that are of a particular culture or mythology aside from, I've got a couple of Greek myth decks. I've got the Hellenic Oracle and I've got the Circe Tarot, but they don't feel right for a winter new year kind of deck stack. They simply don't feel correct. So I grabbed this, which this is a stretch, okay? I'm like, well, this is based on Christian angels. That is the whole point of the deck. It is the influence of the angels. And in the guidebook, especially for the major arcana, so our high priestess is depicting Raziel, the keeper of secrets, sacred knowledge, and divine wisdom. I wouldn't know that looking at the card because I don't have any kind of real knowledge about Christian angels, but I was like, you know what, this will count, this will do. This is a deck inspired by a specific part of Christian mythology and also cultural mosaic. This is a collage deck. It's kind of a mosaic. It's as close as we're gonna get. That is my cultural mosaic deck. It's the influence of the angels. This also does feel very wintry. This is in my January deck stack. It's got that like grungy, gloomy, cold color palette with all of these like neutrally colors and like icy blues. It makes sense to me and I made it fit the prompt. Prompt number 9, Minimal Magic, a clean and simple deck. This one, far more obvious. This is the Lifelines Tarot, the Colour Outside the Lines edition. I believe this edition is out of print. The tower on top again. What is this? What was I saying? This deck, I think this edition, this colour edition is out of print. There is a mini edition without the colour. There's just the black line work. I think that is still available. Don't quote me on that. I will try and link in the description. I always link to where you can get legitimate copies of the decks that I'm showing off. So I will try and link to the mini one if it's still still available. This is plain and simple. This is minimalist. This is really easy for me to read. It's a Rider-Waite Smith clone. It's literally a recreation of Pixie's artwork with a kind of single line. And then there are some parts of the card that are missed out. Like here with our 9 of Cups, we don't have the details of, you know, his face, the details of his clothing, anything like that. But I love it. It's so easy to read. I really enjoy kind of filling in the blanks in my head when I'm reading with this deck. I like looking at the details that have been kept, the details that have been left out. Like here with this 5 of Swords, we don't have any details of another figure. It's just the sort of main figure in the card that is kept. And so you can read into what's there, what's not there, and why. I really like this. It's a really, really good deck to read with. I also really love the guidebook. I do wish the minors had anywhere near as much information in the guidebook. It really is the majors that I like this guidebook for. This is really fun. The Oracle guidance has questions and then an affirmation, which is really growing on me to have affirmations in guidebooks. I never use them as affirmations. I just use them as like extra interpretation. But yeah, I really like the majors in this guidebook. I wish the minors had the same treatment, but you can't have everything. I did one of the spreads in this book when I first got it, and it immediately like hit me right in the heart, and I love it. It's so good. It's minimal art-wise. It's totally magical to read with. Clean and simple. It's a good deck. Prompt number 10 is Storybook Charm, a cozy tale. I had to do it. I had to grab the Hobbit Tarot, which is literally based on a story. I can't get in. There we go. This also just feels very appropriate. I did a video about a year ago, almost exactly, talking about my decks that I was drawn to in the kind of post-New Year but still winter. Feels like a new season, but it's not. It's like winter part 2. I'm pretty sure I pulled this deck out in that video, mainly because of the color palettes and these. Like this looks like a cold sky. This looks like a cold wintry sky. And there's a lot of these like twilighty kind of blues. This is really beautiful. The Emperor here. And like it feels very appropriate for winter, especially the tag is called Tarot in Twilight, and there's a lot of these like twilighty looking skies here. It's literally based on a story, and I think a storybook as opposed to just storybook sounds like a kid's book. You don't tend to think of like, I don't know, Game of Thrones, a storybook, but The Hobbit was literally a book that he wrote for his kids. So The Hobbit kind of is a storybook, and so it just fits. The scenes from the story that are used for each card I think really work, and I love using a deck where I know the story well enough that I know what it's referencing. It adds that extra layer of meaning to the card, to the reading. It's completely beautiful. I love this artist, Peter Prokonik, who did the illustration, who's done a few other decks that I also have because I just think his art's beautiful. It's such like cozy fantasy vibes. So the Hobbit Tarot, absolutely my Storybook Charm deck for this tag. Okay, we're getting there. Prompt number 11, Visionary Vibes, a modern, abstract, creative deck. I probably could have grabbed a lot of decks for this, but I went with the New Chapter Tarot. I always think this is kind of thothy, kind of not. There is something about the, especially in the minors, the like geometry and the shapes that are used in the artwork. It feels very modern to my eye, like this. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It's modern and abstract and creative. It's exactly that. I love this Temperance. I love this deck. Does it get enough love? No. That it could be said of every single one of my decks. I do these videos and I'm like, oh, I love this. I love this. Why don't I reach for this deck more? And I'm like, I should just pare down my collection, have 5 decks, but then I wouldn't have all these other decks that I love. So it's just, like I say, tarot collector problems. But yeah, this is beautiful. I love this universe. Like this is why I feel like it's thothy, because we've got the universe instead of the world. Do we have like this hermit is so cool. I just think it's completely beautiful. I love the aces in this deck. I was thinking, I wonder if, although we have judgment, so maybe it's not thothy. And I don't know whether it's justice and strength, or if it's adjustment and lust. I think it's justice and strength, or strength and justice. Okay, we have strength in the 11th position, but we had judgment for 20, which isn't thoth. So who knows? And it's strength, not lust. I don't know. I am really coming around to thinking I prefer adjustment to justice as like a card meaning, but I'm not convinced about strength and lust. about which I prefer. So I'm kind of hybriding in my personal sort of notes and interpretations and things. I'm sort of leaning towards like a hybrid Rider-Waite-Smith Thoth, where I've still got justice in the 11th position, but I prefer adjustment. I just think that makes more sense. I understand it better. It feels more natural than legal, which I just think tends to make more sense in my readings. Especially the way Crowley describes it as a constant, nature's constant attempts to rebalance things, rather than the kind of legal take of the justice card. Fits better with the way I read tarot, makes more sense in my readings. I prefer it. I'm still working on strength and lust and whether I prefer one or the other. But also I'm in an 11 year personally. 2025 is an 11 year for me. So I've always considered that to be a justice year. I've always considered 11 to be justice because that's the system I first learned. But I'm like, well, if I prefer adjustment, should that not be 8? And so maybe I'm in a lust year. Maybe that needs to be a project for me, as if I need more projects. Anyway, the new chapter tarot is my Visionary Vibes Modern Abstract Creative deck. And I suppose given the little tangent I just went on definitely has me thinking in a kind of creative way, because reconsidering my whole approach to what to put at number 11. Okay, the penultimate prompt is Cosmic Connection, Deck in the Stars. I simply had to grab the Heavenly Bodies Astrology deck, which I recently did a video about. I did a video kind of reconnecting with this deck. I have since edged it in a few different colours. I did a colour for the planets, the houses, the signs, and then I think like everything else. So she looks really cute. When I last showed her off, I hadn't etched her yet, and I have done now, and it feels right. I've bonded a little bit more with this deck. So this is an oracle, and this is an astrology oracle. It has some keywords on each card, and the cool thing about this, I'll be brief because I just did a video. Say you have Chiron and Gemini in the 10th house. You can read these keywords like a sentence, which I think is so cool. Chiron and Gemini in house 10 is about hurting and healing through curiosity, intellect, and networking in the areas of your life of structure, discipline, life mission, accomplishments, and career. It's a really good deck for that. The guidebook is also really nice. It's also really beautiful, and the reason I picked this is mainly because it is the first one that came to mind. As a cosmic deck, I don't have another strictly astrology deck, and I've also recently renewed my interest in it and excitement to work with this. Cosmic Connection being the prompt, I'm like, well, this literally helps me connect the dots with astrology, so it just makes sense. Okay, finally, the 13th prompt is Seasonal Shifts, a deck that is in tune with the time of year. I really struggled with this, and in the end, I grabbed the Herbal Astrology Pocket Oracle. So again, this isn't strictly an astrology deck. I think it's more of a herbal deck to my limited use with it so far. It feels more like a herbal deck than an astrological one. This has, the keyword is the herb, the plant, and then we've got the astrology up here. So this is hibiscus with Venus and Pluto associations. And sort of similar to the Midnight Magic deck, my Earth Connection deck, I feel like this works all year round, but there is something about the colour palette and again the nighttime scenes that feel very appropriate for this time of year. I have used this all year round. I have been using this particularly recently, so it especially fits as a kind of New Year deck. The original video by Tarot Geek, this was her list of decks that she's using for the new year, and I've kind of taken it more as just prompts to dig out some decks in my collection, but this is one that I have been using recently and intend to keep using for the foreseeable. I really enjoy pairing this with decks. I've been pairing it with the Guardian of the Night Tarot by MJ Cullinane, one of my most beloved decks in my collection. I've paired this with a bunch of things, and I think it works with a lot of different decks. And I do like the guidebook. It is not my favourite guidebook of all time. I'm still on the hunt for my perfect herbal deck. I don't know what that would even look like, but this isn't quite it. I do like the guidebook. I don't love the guidebook. I will happily reach for the guidebook with this deck, but I don't reach for this deck so I can use the guidebook. Does that make sense? I feel like I have some decks where I just want to work with the guidebook, and with this I want to work with the deck. All of that to say, I feel like this works for the time of year because this works for any time of year, which is how I took the prompt. It's in tune with the time of year, as in this is always in tune with whatever time of year it is, not that it is particularly in tune with this New Year winter time. So that is everything. That is the 13th deck of this Tarot in Twilight tag. And with that, I will let you go. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, I really hope you've enjoyed it. Do let me know what your New Year decks are. Let me know what your answers to these prompts would be. Like I said, I will of course link Tarot Geek's original video in the description below for you to go and check out if you haven't already seen it. This was really fun. It feels like it's been a while since I've done a kind of grab a bunch of decks to fit some prompts tag, which I just really enjoy. It's a lovely excuse to flip through my collection and pull out some decks that I maybe haven't looked at in a while, like the Midnight Magic, the Fyodor Pavlov, the Hobbit, the New Chapter. I feel like I haven't touched them in ages, so it was fun to kind of remind myself that they exist. So that is it from me. If you want to see more from me, there is a link to my Patreon in the description below if you want to come check us out, see what we're doing over there. There is also a link to my Etsy for my tarot spread zines and tarot readings. Give me a like if you liked this one, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.